Well, let's get more on this now with John James. He's an architect and medieval historian who's devoted much of his life to researching the construction of European Gothic buildings, and he joins me now in the studio. Thanks for coming in, John. What's the architectural significance of the Notre Dame Cathedral?
It's like thinking of France, you think of Paris. When you think of Paris, you think of Notre Dame. It's the most ancient monument in the capital of any real merit, and it is hugely, emotionally, heartfelt importance to the French. It's symbolic of what they stand for. Macron made some comments on this today. He said it embodies everything that France has ever achieved, its revolutions, its victories, its defeats. Everything there comes down in the end to Notre Dame. So to damage that building is to really take something huge out of the core of France.
And what's so significant about it from an architectural point of view? Why are we so interested in this particular building, aside from the fact that it's so old?
Well, it's in Paris. There's a prime reason. There's a whole lot of spectacular buildings from this period. And the thing that holds them up as being really outrageous historically is that all other architectural buildings up to the 19th century were made of solid stone. Big blocks placed on top of each other like this. And by that time, they were building things like skeletons, in which room was left for glass. So all you saw was a little tiny bit of stone, as if the building was being hung from the sky, rather than being supported from the ground. So it really was God's building. It was like a paradise on earth. And they actually saw it that way, that they were creating God's structure. This is of enormous importance in understanding why that period means so much.
And we just saw some drawings there of the skeleton of the cathedral. Of course, it's built in the Gothic style. What does that mean, to be Gothic?
Sadly, it was a term invented by someone in the 18th century who thought the buildings looked horrible and said it was built by Goths. But the term stuck. Now there you've got now on the screen the interior photograph of the roof, which has now disappeared. And they called it the forest. And it was just a mass of timbers, beautifully put together. They've lasted 800 years, with powerful winds against them and a massively heavy roof of lead. And this is all medieval construction out of timber. Just a wonderful space up there.
So we can see that again now. So this all lost, and of course we've seen a range of photographs, some of showing the aerial view, and you can see that that outside structure still exists. How significant is it that that has been able to be maintained?
Totally. The Middle Ages had fires of this nature often, and it's why they created the vault, that stone canopy, as it were, that sits over the top of the church, like this, of stone, and you put the roof on top of that like a hat. Now if that burns down, the stone keeps the fire from entering the rest of the building. And for this building has been absolutely significantly faithful to its original designers. They wanted it to be fireproof, and look, it has been. So you think you're just dealing in really rather thin, because they're fairly thin shells of stone supported by ribs that run diagonally in arches. And this is what has saved the building, as they intended it to. So we can really be really satisfied with the work of 800 years ago.
It's truly incredible. And as you mentioned, we've heard Macron today say that he wants to restore and rebuild this magnificent structure. Is that something that will be relatively easy to do?
Oh, no. It will take up the centre of France, well, the centre of Paris as well. Builders, scaffolding, cranes, it's an immense job. Now, when Chartres when its roof burnt down in 1830s, they replaced it with cast iron, the largest cast iron roof ever built in France. Now that has never burnt down again because it's no longer burnable. Now my guess is they'll do the same. They won't try and rebuild it in timber. They'll do it probably in something like cast iron or precast concrete. So it's never going to burn again.
But will that lose
No, you won't
some
notice
of
it.
the meaning and the
No.
special historical context of this building?
Good question, but no. Hasn't had any impact on shut. We're just very grateful that they did it. And if you come back and you see this same roof back as it was, maybe covered in copper, maybe covered in lead, maybe covered in steel of some sort, some other material, but it will be the same form. And it's the form that makes the magic.
This is a building that many, many people have visited, I believe 30,000 a day. Do you think this will attract even more visitors now?
I hope not. When I go there, it's too crowded. I've got to really fight my way into a building that I love. I've been going there for 50 years, and every time I go, I feel it's my building. And suddenly all these other people are all around. I don't mind if nobody else ever comes, personally. It's a space I just adore.
That's probably how many Parisians feel. John James, thanks so much for coming in. It's lovely to share some of your thoughts this afternoon.
A pleasure.